गुड आफ्टरनून। सो कल हमने बात की ऑन इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन इन इंग्लैंड। हाँ, इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन इन इंग्लैंड। Industrial revolution in England. Why? Because that was the first country where industrial revolution took place, and that's why a model was created. What was the model? How to industrialize our society. Number one, how to industrialize, and number two, what were the benefits of industrialization? Every other country in Europe saw that within a few decades, suddenly England accelerated the amount of production and amount of profit both within a very short span of time. So that was a very astonishing thing. Why? Because England broke the mode of production that we discussed in yesterday's class. It was a transformation which was quite beneficial to in fact all the aspects and the spheres of the industry as well as of the society. So number one, how to industrialize, and benefits. What are the benefits of industrialization? Both the elements attracted other countries to somehow start or initiate industrial revolutions in their respective countries. One arch rival of the England was France. Yesterday I told you that France came in the industrial process as a latecomer. So all these countries which came later, they all are referred as latecomers in the industrial revolution. Latecomers in the industrial revolution. So first is the France, and we will discuss shortly about the French industrialization when we will discuss Napoleonic era at the end as a process, how after and during the Napoleonic era conditions in the France suited for the industrial revolution. The second good example is Germany. Germany was another country, and again we will read about the German industrialization later. Okay. Third very significant country, China. However, most of the short listings of the topics, they do not include China in the topics to be read. But it is my understanding that industrial revolution in England until the industrial revolution of China, it is a great story and a great culmination, because industrialization was the factor which pushed the British imperialism to its heights, and then America emerged as a superpower because of the very strong foundation of the industrial revolution in America, and China now posing a serious challenge to the monopoly of the America in the world order, and that is because of the industrialization. Okay, so China must be read. Many other teachers do not suggest to read China as a case study, but again China will be read separately. Here two countries, Russia and Japan. I am going to discuss today these two countries. Okay, France, Germany and China will be discussed later. Okay, why? Because if I will discuss French, German and the Chinese industrial revolution without discussing the context of it, you will not be able to grasp it. So that's why I am omitting these three topics and now directly coming to the Russian Revolution. Okay, and these are the segments which I will dictate and you will have to write. Okay. Okay, so the first of all, Industrial Revolution in Russia. Industrial Revolution in Russia. So as I told you, that model was already created. Model was already created by England. So that's why, you know, any other country which wants to initiate the process of industrial revolution, who can easily apply the model, put forward by the English. But that was a very difficult equation. Why? Because all other places which I discussed, the place and time, both the things were different. Russia was not England. Japan was not England. That is the importance of place. And when Russian Revolution take place, the world was different, and when the Industrial Revolution in England took place, the world was altogether different. So that is called the difference of time and place, meaning the context was different. Okay? Whatever I am writing on the board, just try to put in your notes. Don't forget. The place and the time, the context, it is a universal example which can be used anywhere. Okay? The time and the place. And we have seen that this model, in this model, mercantilism was a great motivating force. Mercantilism, I told you, mercantilism, vyapar वाणिज्य कर रहे हैं, they accumulated a lot of wealth that can be invested as capital. Okay, so mercantilism was a pushing force, but Russia was, fundamentally a different societal setup. It was fundamentally agrarian. Okay? Agrarian, meaning based on agricultural activities. And number two, the second point was that it was a land-based country, land-based, where land was the, factor which was determining other, societal and economic things. Why? In the mercantile class, money and then capital was the most important thing. In an agrarian society, land was the most important thing. ठीक है? क्या बोलते हैं? जहां ज्यादा जो सर्विस क्लास होगा तो वो क्या करेगा? मेरे पास कितने पैसे हैं? बिजनेस क्लास क्या कहेगा? मेरे पास कितने पैसे हैं? लैंड के बारे में बात नहीं होती. पैसे होते हैं तो लैंड भी होता है, लेकिन पहले पैसे के बारे में डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. लेकिन किसान क्या कहेगा? मेरे पास 100 बीघा खेत है. उसको कितने में कैलकुलेट करोगे? कितने करोड़ में? हो सकता है हाईवे पर हो तो करोड़ों में हो, बहुत अंदर हो तो लाखों में हो, लेकिन लैंड. ठीक है? सो हियर द सेकेंड फीचर. आदित्य 5 मिनट्स अभी लेट हैं आप. इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन कल बात की. मैंने कहा कि अ मॉडल वॉज क्रिएटेड एंड वी सॉ दैट व्हाट वर द स्पेसिफिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ English model of industrial revolution. But France, Germany, China, Russia and Japan, these are the 5 countries which must be read as case studies, not in very detail but in short. France, Germany and China will be discussed later. Here today I am going to discuss Russia and Japan. ठीक है? So Russia, I said that the place and the time of each of the country mentioned here was different, meaning the context was different. What is context? The time and the place. Time and the place. जो यहां लिखा है बोर्ड पे सब उतार देना, ठीक है? फिर जो एडिशनली डिक्टेट करवा दूंगा वो हो जाएगा. सो फंडामेंटली अग्रेरियन नंबर 1. नंबर 2, लैंड बेस्ड एंड द सिस्टम ऑफ गवर्नेंस was czarist. Tsar. The king was called Tsar in Russia. T-S-A-R. Meaning the setup was very much different. Here you see, and don't forget to compare it with the English model. Okay, what was the English model? In England there was a king, but there was a parliament too, and parliament was stronger than the king. Here, czarist regime, czar, king, a dictator kind of, king. On the other hand, in England, mercantilism was quite developed. Okay, here fundamentally agrarian society and land based system. So Russia was a very different country. So that's why Russia was slow in progress. Russia was quite slow in progress. Okay. However, despite that, since the model and some of the features of the model had become universal, so that's why few of the industries such as coal mining and its associated industries developed in Russia. Why? Because coal reserves were there. So that's why mining started. That is the demand of the world at that time. So that's why coal mining and other heavy industries, partly developed in Russia. But the scale of operation was comparatively small, meaning coal reserves were abundant. But in comparison to the availability of the core, the scale of mining was limited and small. So here it was slow in progress, number 1. But heavy industries such as coal was, there. ठीक है? However, limited and small. Okay. See, now as we read that what led England towards the Industrial Revolution. Now the question arises that in a czarist country where progress of the industrialization was quite slow and heavy industries were there but very limited and very small, what led Russia towards the industrialization? And the factor behind it was Crimean War. Crimean War, which was fought between Russia and an alliance. And in this alliance, which were the countries I am going to tell you. 1854 to 56. And it was a war between Russia versus alliance. And in this alliance, लिख लो, United Kingdom, the industrial country, France, another industrialized country by that time, 1800, we are talking about 56, meaning in the middle of the 19th century. At that time, French, industrialization had started. Okay, another very important force. However, it was not industrial. Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire. And the fourth in this alliance was Sardinia, Piedmont. It was a country. Sardinia, Piedmont. So it was an alliance, it was a grand alliance. And two of the countries in this alliance were those who have developed industries in their country. So meaning when Russia was, badly defeated in the Crimean War, likho, when Russia was badly defeated in the Crimean War, need for industrialization was realized. Why? What were the factors? What were the reasons? Russia realized that industrial revolution task must be taken up. There were reasons. Number one, military factories in Russia failed to supply war material. Number one, first feature. Okay, military, the question of military supplies. And number two, there was no technical advancement in Russia. No technical advancement in Russia. Lack of infrastructure in the country. Lack of infrastructure in the country. And number four, lack of transportation system. Lack of transportation system. Okay. So those were the factors which pushed Russian industrial revolution. Now, because of this defeat, Tsar Alexander II, Tsar Alexander II, Alexander II initiated, some reforms. He ruled from 1855 to 1881. 1855 to 81. And he was the person who actually took great interest in the available Western, English and other technologies and just tried to create conditions where industrial revolution could take place, just to boost. And there was another person which contributed immensely. He was a mathematician, and Tsar Alexander II invited him to lead these reforms. Okay, and the name of person is Serei Witte. Serei Witte. Serei Witte. So, first task, in 1861, first and the foremost, reform which was introduced, that was emancipation of serfs. Emancipation of serfs. Serfs मतलब सर्फ एक्सेल, गुलाम है ना, ठीक है. Emancipation of serfs. तो जो गुलाम थे वो गुलाम मुक्त कर दिए गए। कब? 1861. They all freed. And you know, that was actually the serfdom in Russia was the last vestige of feudalism. So many feudalism was weak even in Russia, but that was the final blow to feudalism when Tsar Alexander II in 1861 introduced emancipation of serfs reform. फ्यूडलिज्म, गुलाम और गुलाम मुक्त कर दिए गए। अब फ्यूडलिज्म के पास कुछ भी रहा बाकी नहीं, ठीक है। अर्लियर दे वर बॉन्डेड लेबरर्स, bonded laborers. What was the status of serfs in the Russian society? Right. Bonded laborers in the Russia were landless laborers worked in the agricultural lands owned by aristocrats. Okay? And it was in fact a double blow to the nobility and to the feudal sections of the society. That was the privilege which was snatched away. Number one, landless laborers. And the second thing, that, write it down, powers of conservative nobles undermined, powers of conservative nobles undermined. Okay. So what happened? New labor force for industries was unleashed. New labor force, that was an essential requirement of industrial revolution. No? Bonded laborers released as wage laborers. Wage laborers, okay? Wage laborers. And these wage laborers provided workforce for the industry. Okay? Workforce for the industry. Second very important aspect, new agricultural methods were introduced. New agricultural methods were introduced. That was another significant reform which was introduced in the field of agricultural production. ठीक है? And this particular thing, new agricultural methods, मतलब नए नए मेथड एग्रीकल्चर के, और जब नए मेथड एग्रीकल्चर के आए तो क्या होगा? एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन बढ़ेगा, और जब एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन बढ़ेगा तो सरप्लस बढ़ेगा। ये समझ में आया आदित्य? ज्यादा खेती हुई, ज्यादा प्रोडक्शन हुआ, तो प्रोडक्शन से ज्यादा सरप्लस आ गया। वो सरप्लस जब ज्यादा आएगा तो फिर हम उससे कुछ दूसरी जगहों पर भी इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं या काम कर सकते हैं। एंड हियर अ न्यू पेजेंट क्लास इमर्जेस इन रशिया, हाँ, and that is called kulaks. The growth of kulaks in Russia. Okay? Who were these kulaks? It was a new peasant class. Okay? Which very soon turned into peasant capitalist. Kulaks. New class emerges. Peasants, rich peasants, new class peasants, and there were few of the new class peasants which converted into kulaks. And what is kulak? Kulak was peasant capitalist. Capital in the hands of a peasant. Huh? Peasant capitalist. Okay? Peasant capitalist. Owning large tracts of land, livestock, large tracts of land, TRACTS, of land, livestock, and machinery. So, first of all, these, wage laborers were hired by kulaks because industrialization was not there. It was absent. So, immediately this labor force, migrated towards the agricultural practices, but now in a different status. Earlier they were bondage laborers, now they are released ones and they are working in the fields of the kulaks. Okay. So what happened? Number one, agricultural productivity rose up. And number two, surplus generated as profit. As profit. In 1870s, next point, a series of infrastructural projects such as railways, right within the brackets, Trans-Siberian Railways, Trans-Siberian Railways. And who guided this infrastructural project? Exactly, Sarai Witte. Okay, Sarai Witte. Next point, Witte tried to encourage foreign investment in manufacturing sector too. Next point, Witte's other reforms. Currency reforms, number one. Stabilized foreign exchange rates. That was very poor in Russia. The currency रूबल, ठीक है, उसका वैल्यू बहुत ही कम था, तो कितना भी करेंसी लेकर के जाओ तो आपको बहुत कम रूबल मिलते थे. ठीक है, तो लोग आते क्यों? तो उसने क्या किया? फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रेट्स और करेंसी दोनों रिफॉर्म्स लेके आया. थर्ड, फंडिंग ऑफ पब्लिक वर्क्स सच एज टेलीग्राफ and electric plants. Next point, around 1890s, new factories owned by British and French capitalist classes opened up. Next point, by 1900 Russia was the fourth largest producer of steel and second largest source of petrol. अभी भी यूक्रेनियन क्राइसिस में क्या चल रहा है ना, यही तो चल रहा है, पेट्रोल पेट्रोल पेट्रोल, बहुत हल्ला मचा हुआ है. Trans-Siberian Railway connected the countryside. Trans-Siberian Railway connected the countryside with industries. Okay, that is the short story of Russian industrialization. Nothing more is needed. Okay, so that's why we are not going into too much details of all this. Have an idea and just go through. Okay, here emancipation of serfs, new agricultural methods were introduced, kulaks and others, and then the third factor was Wittes reforms. Okay, Wittes reform, and that was the brief story of Russian Revolution. But what were the drawbacks of Russian industrialization? Now note it down. Drawbacks. What were the drawbacks? Why drawbacks in regard to the Russia? In this particular case, why drawbacks are important? Any answer? Because in very good, बहुत ही बढ़िया. Russian Revolution took place after that, so that's why discussing drawbacks is necessary here. Okay, what happened? You know, industries developed, but in parallel to the development of the industry, ideas of Karl Marx, okay, and socialism was also, you know, been popularizing. Okay, and in new industrial labor class who thought that it is an emancipatory idea. Why it is an emancipatory idea? मुक्ति दिलाने वाला विचार है. क्यों? क्योंकि क्या करता है, रशियन केस में नहीं, दुनिया के सारे इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन के केस में, what were the issues of industrial labor? Number 1, exploitation, शोषण है. हाँ. नंबर 2, लॉन्ग वर्किंग आवर्स, 12-12 घंटे काम करो. नो शेयर इन द प्रॉफिट. नंबर 4, low wages. Number 5, poor working conditions. Poor working conditions and poor standards of living. Isn't it? यही सब तो होता है. तो द मार्क्सिज्म और मार्क्सिस्ट आइडियाज suggested solution of all these problems. How to resolve all these problems? Class consciousness, class consciousness. We all belong to one such class, that is called labor class. Easy to understand, na? Neha, Aditya? Easy to understand. Marxism says that let us, unite and let us break the chains of the capitalist classes. लड़ना सिखा रहे हैं अपने एक्सप्लॉइटर के खिलाफ. और यहां पे क्या हो रहा है? This is called class consciousness. And we will see all these, details again when we'll discuss socialism. So just a brief idea. What were the drawbacks? Development of the, number one, development of the Marxist ideas in Russia led to the emergence of a new revolutionary class, that is industrial proletariat. अभी समझाते हैं. Proletariat. Proletariat. What is proletariat? Working class. सर्वहारा. हिंदी में उसको कहते हैं सर्वहारा. हम लोग छोटे थे तो कहते थे जो सब कुछ हार गया हो वही सर्वहारा, है ना? तो प्रोलेटारियत क्लास. सो दैट इज द न्यू इमर्जिंग वर्किंग क्लास. हाँ, एंड दिस इज अ रिवोल्यूशनरी वर्किंग क्लास. क्रांतिकारी है, झगड़ा करने को तैयार बैठा है. और यहां से ट्रेड यूनियनिज्म शुरू हो जाता है. पता चला मजदूर भिड़ गया मालिक से, तुम्हारी ऐसी तैसी ताला बंद, स्ट्राइक, सारे लेबर धरने पे चले गए. ठीक है. अलेक्जेंडर टू वॉज असैसिनेटेड इन, लिखो, अलेक्जेंडर टू वॉज असैसिनेटेड इन 1881. Alexander II was assassinated in 1881. Emergence of communism as a strong political ideology and political trend. In 1906, October Manifesto and consequently in 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia took place. Revolution in Russia took place, and the process of industrialization within the capitalist framework was halted, and socialism became the state ideology. Now come to the another country which was actually a kind of shock to the Western world, where industrialization took place, and that country was Japan. How Japan not only broke and challenged the monopoly of the West in the industrial realm. It also challenged a superiority inferiority kind of binary between the West and the East. In Europe, in the West, industrial revolution has been taking place. In Asia, Japan was the first country which industrialized itself. But apart from that, what was the political reality of time? Here were the master countries and here were the colonial countries. Okay? So this master country wala logic failed here. Why? Because Japan astonished them. It was a shock, it was a news to the Western world that one Asian country industrialized, and that is such a rapid pace. धड़ाम, ठीक है ना? तो वो क्यों, उस पर बात करेंगे. तो एक तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है कि केवल इंडस्ट्रियल मोनोपोली ऑफ द वेस्ट वाज नॉट चैलेंज्ड, even the superiority complex of the West was challenged by Japan, and that was the point where America and Japan confronted with each other. That was a responsible factor. Okay, so the first question again, when and how. When and how. राइट इट डाउन, जो समझाना होगा समझाऊंगा. Japanese industrial revolution take place. Japanese industrial revolution take place in the late 19th century. In the late 19th century, after Meiji Restoration. Meiji Restoration. Meiji Restoration. What was Meiji Restoration? Very briefly, the political revolution, लिख लो, what is Meiji Revolution? The political revolution in 1868 that brought about the final demise of Tokugawa shogunate. कहो कि सर ये तो मजेदार रहा, मेजी रेवोल्यूशन क्या है, ये पढ़ते पढ़ते उसका जवाब पढ़ा तो पता चला तोकुगावा शोगुनेट क्या है ना. दैट वाज मिलिट्री रूल इन जापानीज लैंग्वेज. ओके, मिलिट्री रूल मीनिंग end of military rule was called Meiji Restoration. Okay, now come to the another important fact. What were the major characteristics of Japanese industrialization? What were the characteristics? Okay, very important. First point, it learned from Western experience. The first point, learned from Western experience, because model was already there ना, पहले से ही मॉडल बना हुआ है. Resorted to reverse engineering, very important terminology pertaining to the Japanese industrialization. Reverse engineering. What is reverse engineering? लिखो, a process in which technologically deconstructed to extract design information from them. Design information from them. Tools and technologies. Next point. Tools and technologies invented in the West, adapted to the reverse engineering model. Through the reverse engineering model. Point. Very quick and fast industrialization. Very quick and fast industrialization. Within 30 years, Japan was competing with the leading superpowers of the modern industrial world. Just take a pause here and just try to connect it with the Asian context. Asian context. Why I emphasized upon this binary between the West and the Asian countries? Superior Western countries and inferior Asian countries. And when Japan rose up as an industrial country and started challenging within the 30 years of time to the Western dominance and the monopoly, okay, and created its own business network, trade network, commercial network with the Asian countries, it was a direct challenge to the Western monopoly and hegemony. Okay, number one. And it also boosted the morale of many nationalist elements in those countries where anti-colonial movement was in its earlier phases. For example, in India, Japan was something like a hero. Everybody was keeping a close eye on Japan. Why? Because whenever Japan, secured any major, victory, it always give confidence to the Asian countries and especially the Indian nationalists. For example, in 1905, Japan defeated Russia. Russia was a European country. And by that time, it was an industrial country too. In 1905. But Japan defeated Russia. क्या लेना देना जापान से? लेकिन जैसे हुआ कि एशियन कंट्री ने पटक के मारा, है ना, भागे भागे घूम रहे. So it was a sense of pride that some Asian country, reached up to those heights which were only attained by the Western countries so far. And now one Asian country is an industrial country. So just try to, write down this Indian context here. Rise of Japan not only challenged the industrial monopoly the industrial monopoly of the West, it also challenged the superiority complex of the Western countries. In 1905, when Japan defeated Russia, it proved a great morale booster. It proved a great morale booster for those Asian countries where nationalist movement had been emerging. Okay, another very interesting characteristic of the Japanese industrialization. Model was there, I told you, no? Model was there. But what did it do? Reverse engineering. You will not sell technology to Japan, but technology is available in the market, I will purchase it. भेज के किसी को खरीद लिया, टेक्नोलॉजी खरीद हो गया, उसके बाद उसको डीकंस्ट्रक्ट करके थे। ऐसे ही ना जैसे बचपन में होता है, घड़ी रखी है, मैंने एक बार अलार्म क्लॉक को खोल दिया कि है क्या भाई, बजती कैसे, अलार्म लगा दो, टन 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 टन, खोल दिया, स्प्रिंग उछल के बाहर आ गई, पता चला स्प्रिंग होती। लेकिन चलो, मशीन को डीकंस्ट्रक्ट किया और डीकंस्ट्रक्ट करके समझ लिया मशीन बनी कैसे, उसका मॉडल एक्सट्रैक्ट कर लिया और फिर अपने आप बनाने लग गए। यही तो किया, क्योंकि वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज बेचेंगे नहीं। क्लियर? नंबर 2, मैंने कहा मॉडल तो है। मॉडल तो क्या है? ब्रिटेन में क्या हुआ, पहले जो है ये क्या नाम है, लाइट इंडस्ट्री डेवलप हुई, स्मॉल इंडस्ट्री, लाइट इंडस्ट्री, उसके बाद हैवी इंडस्ट्री या जिसको कहते हैं हैवी इंडस्ट्री, ठीक है, लाइट और लाइट टू हैवी, cotton centric, then iron and coal centric. And again here Japan reversed this process. He began with the heavy industries and the light industries followed it. Okay, next important factor, feature. Unlike Western model of industrial development, Japanese IR लिख लो, ठीक है ना, Japanese IR began with the development of heavy industries, ब्रैकेट में लिख लो iron and steel, comma, shipbuilding and railways. Okay, now just understand the next point, very important, and I told you time and context. When England industrialized, there was a complete void. None other country of the world was industrial country. England emerged as the sole industrial country, na? There was no competition. But when Japan industrialized, there was a stiff competition. So that's why they had to put it, enormous resources, energies and the fundings. So that's why the Japanese industrialization is considered as one of the most, costlier industrialization of the world. कंपटीशन है, बनाना ही कठिन है, बना लिया तो बेचना कठिन है। ठीक है, लिखो, जापानीज इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन वॉज अ कॉस्टली इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन where different industrial powers already competing with each other. Okay, next point. Russia, coal and iron reserves were abundant. There was no dearth of these mineral resources. England was dependent on their colonies. So that's why the cost of industrialization was not too high. But Japan was a small country. So that's why mineral resources and other resources which needs for the industrialization needs to be imported. So that's why next point, import dependent industrialization, dependency on the import dependent industrialization, mineral and other sources were scarce in Japan. That's why import was the only resort to push the commodity production. Next feature, what had happened in England? First, agricultural revolution took place. It was not referred as a separate revolution, but suddenly by introducing new innovative methods in agriculture, suddenly the agricultural surplus in England rose up to, new heights. So that's why the problem of productivity in the agricultural sphere was solved. So that's why it was called agricultural revolution. And then what happened? Mercantilism. ठीक है, mercantile policies, trade and commerce activities, and then emergence of capitalism and industrial revolution. That was the process, na? But in England, direct industrial revolution came. No agricultural revolution, no mercantilism, direct industrial revolution. Okay? So Japan is a very interesting case to be studied. Direct, right? In Japan, direct industrialization took place unlike England, where agricultural development and mercantilism came before the coming of industrial revolution. चलो, अ वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चन। उधर जो ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स हों वो भी इंटरेक्ट कर सकते हैं, ठीक है। आप अपना मैसेज डालो, डिक्टेशन में अगर कुछ छूट गया हो तो वो भी बताओ, ठीक है। ऐसा नहीं है कि वो छूट गया तो छूट गया। अच्छा, क्वेश्चन, कैपिटलिज्म, कैपिटलिज्म के लिए कौन जरूरी है? बहुत सी चीजें जरूरी, लेकिन सबसे जरूरी क्या है? हाँ, प्रोडक्शन। नहीं नहीं, कैपिटलिज्म के आने के लिए, उसके पैदा होने के लिए क्या जरूरी है? मार्केट, रॉ मटेरियल, सब ठीक है। अरे यार, उसके नाम की तो कुछ कदर करो। कैपिटलिज्म के लिए कैपिटलिस्ट जरूरी है, ठीक है। कैपिटलिज्म के लिए कैपिटलिस्ट जरूरी है। तो कैपिटलिज्म कैसे पैदा होता है? कैपिटलिस्ट क्लास, एग्रेरियन, जैसे रशिया में क्या हुआ, कुलक, पेजेंट कैपिटलिस्ट आ गए। यहां पर मर्केंटलिस्ट जो है वही कैपिटलिस्ट बन गए, और इस वजह से कैपिटलिज्म आ गया। जापान में तो आया नहीं। तो अब कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट कौन करेगा? वहां पे स्टेट करेगा। लिखो नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, स्टेट स्पॉन्सर्ड इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन। Japan did not have colonies and private investors and big private investors. That's why state took up this responsibility and following measures were taken up. Number one, institutional setup. Institutional setup was made. Institutions बनाए गए. Number two, model industries. How to popularize industrialization? So that's why model industries बनाई गई. Number three, industrial education was promoted. Industrial education was promoted. Funding was provided. Protection to the industries and a separate ministry for industries. A separate ministry for industries was set up in 1870. Next is इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन तो कर लिया, कंपटीशन भी है, और कंपटीशन भी है कॉलोनियल, लड़ाई होनी है, वॉर चाइना के साथ, क्योंकि चाइना में सारा इंटरवेंशन है of the western forces against Russia. So there were so many rival forces. So next point is, in parallel to the industrial development, rapid growth of military industries was seen. Seeing the colonial conflict from China and Russia. अगला लिख लो. Another salient feature of Japanese industrialization was its different ethical base. Ethics होता है ना, different ethical, ETHICAL, ethical base. Number one, loyalty to the emperor. Loyalty to the emperor, meaning clear, we all are loyal to the emperor, and there is a nation. Emperor is the head of the nation. So we are working here not for the sake of profit. We are working here for the nation. We are working here for the emperor. Okay, that was a new ethical base, very strong. Even today, if you just see the ethical culture of Japanese, working classes or, middle classes, they all are so particular. The highest production rate of per day production of a labor is in China, is in Japan. ऑफिसेज हैं, ऑफिसेज की चेयर एडजस्टेबल हैं. लंच करने के बाद वहां पर अपनी चेयर को एडजस्ट कर लीजिए, पीछे की तरफ चली जाएगी, बेड बन जाएगा. और उनका टाइम है रेस्ट का, लंच के बाद रेस्ट करेंगे, फिर उठ जाएंगे, फिर मेहनत कर रहे हैं. पर डे प्रोडक्टिविटी का मतलब क्या है? इन द इंडस्ट्रियल वर्ल्ड अगर कोई लेबर 8 घंटे काम कर रहा है तो वो प्रोड्यूस कितने देर करेगा? मतलब जापानीज जो लेबर है वो 7.5 घंटे तक प्रोड्यूस करता है, आधे घंटे उसमें वो ब्रेक ले लेता है. जर्मन वो भी 7.5 पौने 8 घंटे का प्रोडक्शन देता है. हमारा इंडियन लेबर बीड़ी भी पीना है, शूशू भी जाना है ना, खाना भी खाना है. अच्छा, मैं समझता हूँ कि ठीक है यार, जिंदगी काम के लिए थोड़ी होती, बेचारे ये क्या है, मशीन थोड़ी है, मनुष्य है. तो अगर इनसे ऐसे काम लिया जा रहा है तो मुझे लगता है गलत लिया जा रहा है. हमारे वाले ठीक है, ठीक है. चलो, सो अभी नेक्स्ट, थर्ड, लॉयल्टी टू द एम्परर. नंबर 2, सेल्फ सैक्रिफाइस टू द नेशन. सेल्फ सैक्रिफाइस टू द नेशन. Less profit motive. Industrialization was regarded as a national project. Industrialization was regarded as a national project. And that was the impact of Confucian thought. कन्फ्यूशियस थे ना, उन्हीं के, कन्फ्यूशियस एक धर्म भी है, ठीक है. तो कन्फ्यूशियन थॉट. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, ग्रोथ ऑफ मिलिटरिज्म एंड एक्सपेंशनिज्म. ग्रोथ ऑफ मिलिटरिज्म एंड एक्सपेंशनिज्म. एक्सपेंशन करना ही पड़ेगा. वाई? Either you control any particular nation through some abstract indirect manner. For example, after 1945, America created a worldwide empire without having any political authority. In most of the countries of the world, there were sovereign independent governments but they all were binding to the international monetary agencies, and America was dictating the terms behind the curtain. ठीक है, लेकिन जापान के लिए तो मुश्किल है. Colonial competition, neighboring countries, China, it was a battleground for all the colonial forces. India was a colony of the British. Indonesia, Java, Sumatra, colonies of the Dutch. So Japan was surrounded with rival colonial forces. What to do now? Expansionism. Fight with them. Okay, so that's why this growth of militarism and expansionism. Next, very important point, low foreign investment. Nobody was interested in investing in Japan. So that's why low foreign investment. अच्छा, आज चाइना के लिए क्या कहते हैं? चाइना का माल हो या मेड इन अमेरिका हो, मेड इन नीदरलैंड्स हो, मेड इन इंग्लैंड हो, तो चाइनीज माल के लिए क्या कहते हैं? इंफीरियर होता है. चाइनीज मिसाइल का भी पता नहीं दगेगी कि नहीं दगेगी, यही तो कहते हैं ना. क्यों? क्योंकि उन्होंने स्मॉल स्केल जो इंडस्ट्री के बाद जो हाउस होल्ड इंडस्ट्रीज खोल दी, घर घर में जो प्रोडक्शन यूनिट्स दे दिया ना, लोन वगैरह देके, तो सामान बड़ा खराब है. इसलिए चाइनीज सामान की कोई गारंटी नहीं होती. सेम हैपेंड विद जापान. नकल करके मशीनरी बना ली, रॉ मटेरियल का क्राइसिस भी है, सब कुछ है, तो जो उनका प्रोडक्शन था दैट वाज इंफीरियर देन द वेस्ट. सो दैट्स व्हाई जापान कुड नॉट expand its market towards the west, because the quality of products was different and inferior to the west. Okay, later Japan made the way in the electronics market. Okay, वो उनके अलग अलग phases of industrial revolution की बात है. तो लास्ट पॉइंट लिख लो, Japanese products were considerably inferior than the Western products. That's why Japan could not create the market in the West. ठीक है, चलो 3 मिनट का ब्रेक ले लो, उसके बाद शुरू करते हैं नेक्स्ट टॉपिक. ठीक है, 3 मिनट का ब्रेक ले लेते हैं. अभी ये बताओ, इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन थॉरोली समझ में आ गया? जितनी जरूरत है उतना पूरा समझ में आ गया? जितने जितने अब हम और कंट्रीज के बारे में बात करेंगे तो कुछ और डायमेंशंस आपके दिमाग में क्लियर होते जाएंगे. ठीक है, अब आ जाते हैं नेक्स्ट टॉपिक पर, जो दैट इज इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट, बिकॉज वंस द क्वेश्चन वाज आस्क्ड दैट व्हाट इंपैक्ट वाज क्रिएटेड बाय द फ्रेंच एंड द अमेरिकन रिवॉल्यूशन ऑन द वर्ल्ड. तो जब हम इंपैक्ट की बात कर रहे हैं तो फ्रेंच रिवॉल्यूशन और अमेरिकन रिवॉल्यूशन, फ्रेंच रिवॉल्यूशन बाद में हुई और अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन पहले हुई, इसलिए हम पहले पढ़ रहे हैं अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन, लेकिन उसके भी पहले पढ़ रहे हैं अमेरिकन कोलोनाइजेशन. क्यों पढ़ रहे हैं अमेरिकन कोलोनाइजेशन? क्योंकि कोलोनाइजेशन और डीकोलोनाइजेशन पर सिलेबस का जोर है. अमेरिकन कोलोनाइजेशन एंड अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन. ठीक है, अमेरिकन colonization and American Revolution. So first of all, what is the relevance of American history in the world history, and what is the importance of American Revolution? And American Revolution is actually, you know, a part of the American colonization. America was colonized, and after a time America emerged as a nation. Capitalist class emerges, mercantilist class emerges, and then they fought against the British, and you know, they get away from the, you know, clutches of the British Empire. That was simple. So both the things are part of two sides of a coin. Okay, American colonization and the American Revolution. So that's why it is considered a major landmark in the history of the world. Okay, why? Because it was first liberation struggle of the world in the modern era. Write it down. Okay, relevance. American Revolution is considered a major landmark in the history of the world. It was first liberation war against a colonial country, and it also gave birth to a new nation that is known as United States of America. So, first part, first, American colonization. American colonization. So, first of all, discovery of America. Discovery of America. ठीक है? Christopher Columbus, we all know, discovered America in 1492. Okay, so discovery of America, Christopher Columbus. Okay, he was, you know, attributed to the, you know, achievement. Christopher Columbus. Who was Christopher Columbus? Very briefly, he was in the service of the Portuguese. Portuguese and the Spanish were the two major navigational forces before the coming of British, French and other colonial powers. So Portuguese and the Spanish. So Christopher Columbus was earlier, and this fact is important from the prelims point of view, because it is connected with the discoveries and the voyages of the world. समुद्री यात्राएं जब हुई, वास्को डिगामा, ये दुनिया भर के, तो उसमें क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस के नाम पर एक इंपॉर्टेंट बात यह है कि ही वॉज नॉट इन द सर्विस ऑफ द स्पेन, ही रिमेन फॉर अ लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम इन द सर्विस ऑफ द पोर्तुगीज, एंड देन ही proposed a project that he wants to go towards the east via Atlantic Ocean. Portuguese king denied any help. He said, no, I am not going to fund you. Then he approached, you know, Spain, and Spain got interest in this project and he funded Columbus. So Columbus started his voyage, first voyage in 1492 with 3 ships. No need to get details of all these three ships. I can, you know, name them, but it will confuse you a lot that whether you need to remember it or not. So that's why I am, you know, omitting all these, you know, portions which are irrelevant from our perspective. I once again, reiterating here that no need to read whatever necessary. More than, no need to read more than whatever necessary. Okay, so unnecessary information should not be collected. So this voyage took up in 1492. And Columbus said that he has discovered a new world. He has discovered a new world. And then he made 3 subsequent voyages to America in 1493, next year, after 5 years in 1498, and then 1502. But the interesting part of this story, why I elaborated a bit this story of Columbus, he thought that he has discovered the Far East. Far East. Okay, Indonesia, Java, Sumatra and others. So when later there was a person who popularized that it is not, Far East, it is a new country, and the country named as America. So hence America's discovery was an accidental discovery. Accidental discovery. Okay. Amerigo Vespucci was a person. He was a merchant from Florence. He named this, place as America. Amerigo, America. And he claimed to be there for several times. He said, Columbus did not discover this. I had discovered it, way back. And he said that he has sighted, North America a year before Christopher Columbus reached there, meaning in 1491. So Amerigo Vespucci contributed in this entire thing, that he actually popularized this notion that it is a new world and it is not the Far East, it is America. Okay. So write it down just in a single sentence. Accidental discovery of America. Accidental discovery of America. Columbus thought the new world is the Far East, but Amerigo Vespucci, Amerigo Vespucci, a merchant from Florence, named it America. And popularized the name thereafter. So 3 important things: Christopher Columbus, 1492, and this supplementary story of Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci. Now, America was discovered, and that is under the aegis of Spain. Okay. Another competitive rival navigational force was Portugal. ठीक है? Portugal. So both the countries immediately reached America and divided it into 2 pieces. Okay? टुकड़े कर लिए, जैसे रोटी मिल गई आधी आधी खाएंगे. ठीक है? So Portuguese and Spanish divided the entire, continent into 2 pieces. Later, British reached there. And what was the hope? It is a new world. And there were, there were so many problems in the America. That was actually a phase of mercantilism, emergence of mercantilism, and, downfall, final, collapse of the old structures. So here, people, there were some, young people who were deprived of their ancestral rights. अमेरिका में, ब्रिटेन में क्या होता था, जो सब बड़ा बेटा होता था उसी को प्रॉपर्टी मिल जाती थी, छोटे क्या करेंगे. तो फिर आदित्य जैसे उन्हें कहा कि हम जाएंगे अमेरिका. तो जहाज पे जहाज अमेरिका गए, इन सर्च ऑफ द न्यू वर्ल्ड, इन सर्च ऑफ द न्यू अपॉर्चुनिटीज. So they all reached there. Okay. So now another part of the story is British settlements in America. British settlements in America. British settlements in America. Okay. Britain was quite interested in the New World and sent a number of people to the Americas to have an assessment of new opportunities there. New opportunities there. First settlement was established in the North America Virginia, within the bracket, as it is named later. When they reached there, the name of the place was not Virginia. Okay. Virginia was the state there in which Jamestown, named after the King James first, became the first settlement. First settlement. मैंने पीरियड लिखवा दिया, अभी तक नहीं लिखवाया है. In 1607. In 1607. Later, several people migrated from England and get settled in and around Jamestown and colonial settlements spread over to the neighboring areas, pushed the local tribal people in America and pushed the Red Indians, within the bracket, native tribal population, and developed 13 colonies consequently. Very interesting. When they reached North America, Jamestown was set up and it was inhabited by local people. local inhabitants, local native people, that those were called Red Indians. Why Red Indians? Because it was perceived that India was discovered, and then later it was, it came to know that it was not India, it is America. So the people, dark color people, but reddish skin, they were called Red Indians, and later they were pushed to the frontiers and these settlements, established. Okay, Red Indians were pushed and population grew first because of the migrants from the Britain to America, and then the local population grew, and after a while when some plantations were developed, tobacco plantations were developed, the local Negro population also, contributed in the population. Two very important things to be understood in this context. Number one, slave trade. It was a triangular trade. Triangular. Triangular meaning this is Europe, this is America, and this is Africa. ठीक है? Cargo full of British commodities and the products, ठीक है, sailed towards the Africa, upper or the northern Africa, ठीक है. वहां पर there were some contractors which were ready with the slaves. In return to the commodities, imported from Europe, so, the slaves were sold out, and then these cargoes moved towards the America. High cost slaves were purchased by the local American settlements and the settlers. Why? They were employed in the settlements and more importantly in the plantations. And in these plantations, tobacco, sugar were two most important commodities. Sugar plantation meaning sugar cane plantations, okay, and tobacco plantations. And the extent of tobacco was as high as this economy was for a while, for some time was called tobacco economy. Tobacco economy. ठीक है? Tobacco economy. So that was the slave trade. और फिर अमेरिका से माल लेके यूरोप. ठीक है? तो यहां से जो स्लेव्स गए वो स्लेव्स भी इसकी पॉपुलेशन की ग्रोथ में वर ए कंट्रीब्यूटरी फैक्टर. ठीक है. सो दीज 13 colonies they were varied in sizes. 13 colonies in number one, varied in sizes and multicultural in character, meaning they were not monolith. ऐसा नहीं था एक जैसे लोग थे और एक साथ रहने लगे. Multicultural in character, varied in size, number one, multicultural in character. Okay. Next point, these colonies were under the control of British Crown and Parliament. These colonies were under the control of British Crown and Parliament. However, they used to enjoy considerable autonomy in their internal affairs. Self-governments were established governors were nominated for the states, and political autonomy was enjoyed. ठीक है, next point, America was an example of settler colonialism. America was an example of settler colonialism. What is settler colonialism? It is a form of colonial settlement. Settler colonialism, where people from the master country settled. Okay, what happened in India? Britishers came, but they never get settled in India. They came here to rule. They came here for a service tenure, but they never adopted India as their country. Okay, they went back after 1947. But what happened in England? Settler colonialism. You know, the colonizers came and settled over there under the aegis of the crown and the parliament of England. And after a while, they rebelled against the master country and got independence. So, part of America, the white population in America is originally British. And in 1945 onwards, America pushed Britain back and, sat on the crown, sat on the throne of the world politics. Replacement of the British as the mightiest empire of the world. And who emerges as the alternate to the British? America. So, settler colonialism. America was an example of settler colonialism. Population of 13 colonies grew by 1700. Population of 13 colonies grew by 1700, almost a six-fold increase, in the population was recorded. In the population was recorded. Hence, United States was now a huge colony populated by colonizers. Interesting. Isn't it very interesting? Population of India, local native people, and a handful of the Britishers. But what about the British? What about the America? Britishers came, settled there, and divided into 13 colonies. But the population grew sixfold. And after that, it was a colony populated by colonizers. कहाँ गए नेटिव इंडियंस? एनिहिलेशन, खात्मा, गायब. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट. हेंस America had been enjoying political autonomy. America had been enjoying political autonomy, but it was economically subjected to British mercantile restrictions. ठीक है, British mercantile restrictions. And here the third part comes, what were the reasons of conflict? What were the reasons of conflict? This conflict started in 1763. This conflict started in 1763. British control measures became stringent. British control measures became stringent and became stringent, and conflict intensified. ओके, समझो जरा, कोलोनियलिज्म, मदर कंट्री and colony everywhere. Okay, mother country and the colony. So always the colonial economy works in the benefit of the mother country, not in the favor of the colonial country, not even the favor of colony. So mother country and the colony relationship, very interestingly, you know, here what America was supposed to do, what America was supposed to do, political economy, you remain happy with the political economy, but don't ask for the economic autonomy. Okay, political autonomy was granted, but economic autonomy cannot be granted. Why? Because exploitation of the economy for the benefits of the mother country was the basic objective of colonialism as a form, as a system. Okay, so one thing must be kept in mind, political autonomy and economic dependency. Okay, so mother country, see, British mercantile policy was essentially directed to the mother country, and just to serve this purpose, America was supposed to do long dash लगाओ, पॉइंटर बनाओ, सप्लाई रॉ मटेरियल टू ब्रिटेन, कच्चा माल देते रहो. नंबर 2, कंज्यूम मैन्युफैक्चर्ड गुड्स प्रोड्यूस्ड इन द मदर कंट्री. Consume manufactured goods produced in the mother country. 3, offer opportunity for the development of a large merchant marine. ये पॉइंट समझ लो अभी कि पहला हो गया रॉ मटेरियल ब्रिटेन को सप्लाई करो, नंबर 2 ब्रिटेन जो माल बना के भेजो उसको कंज्यूम करो, और नंबर 3 जो मर्चेंट मरीन है, व्यापारी और उनके जो जहाज हैं, उनके लिए अपॉर्चुनिटी डेवलप करो. नेक्स्ट, जनरेट वेल्थ टू इंपोर्ट्स एंड एक्सपोर्ट्स. जनरेट वेल्थ to imports and exports. And number 2, provide opportunities for the capital investment in America. Okay. By 1763, when this conflict started, England was now establishing its very ambitious empire, not only in India, even in other parts of the world, and America was considered as one of the parts of the British Empire. It was not, regarded as the brotherly kind of, colony in a different continent. It was regarded as another colony. Okay? So, but number 1, England was a, great maritime power, number 1, and number 2, it had been, emerging as a colonial empire in the world. So its confidence was on its heights. Okay? Now, why in 1763? Why not in 1700? Why not 1650? Is there any background of it? So just let it be clear that what was the background of this conflict, and this background is very important because, and I will tell you that why this background is important. America never, willing to fight for the independence. America was demanding in the beginning of the conflict political autonomy, economic autonomy. Just grant us economic autonomy. We are economically independent and we will remain, colony of the Britain. No problem with that. Okay, so that's why this background is important. हाथ दर्द करते रहा लिखते लिखते, हाँ, कैसे लिखोगे मेंस का एग्जाम लगातार? यही तो प्रैक्टिस है. चलो, जहां पे समझाने वाला वहां पे समझाऊंगा, बाकी लिखो. In 1651, Navigation Act was passed by the Britain just to curb colonial shipping. ठीक है? Following was the provision. No goods manufactured in Asia, Africa or America, no goods manufactured in the Asia, Africa or America could be imported into England. Could be imported into इंग्लैंड. एशिया, अफ्रीका, अमेरिका से कुछ भी इंग्लैंड में इंपोर्ट नहीं कर सकते. नंबर 2, एक्सेप्ट इन शिप्स ऑफ विच, एक्सेप्ट इन शिप्स ऑफ विच द प्रोपराइटर, मीनिंग मालिक है ना, the proprietor and a major part of the mariners were English. Except in ships of which the proprietor and a major part of the mariners were English. Why? Why just curbing the shipping industry in America? Okay? Because Britain wanted to remain economically dominant in the American region. So that's why curb the industry, curb the shipping. Why? Because shipping was necessary for the development of mercantilism. Okay, so if you curb the shipping industry, meaning you are also curbing the potential of the mercantile classes. Why curbing the mercantile classes? Because if American mercantile class would emerge, what would happen to the British mercantile class? Competition. So that's why better to curb the competition. Okay. Now, on the other hand, America was capable of developing their independent carrying trade, independent marine system, shipbuilding, everything. So, Americans were deprived of that right. Okay, write it down. On the other hand, America was capable of developing their independent carrying trade, but America was deprived of that right. Later, these restrictions were tightened up. These restrictions were tightened up by subsequent legislations in the following spheres. Number one, import, export, manufacturing, custom, currency, land, or westward expansion. What is westward expansion? I would tell you. These were the American colonies, largely divided into three parts: Northern America, Middle America, and the Southern America. Okay, these were the 13 colonies. Okay, when these 13 colonies assembled themselves as United States of America, this is Atlantic Ocean. So what were the possibilities of expansion? Only towards the west. So this exercise of expanding the territories of the American border, American frontier, is called westward expansion. Okay, लिख लो इसको तुम लोग ताकि ध्यान रहे. वेस्टवर्ड एक्सपेंशन के आगे लिख लो possibility to expand towards the western frontiers of American continent. So here in each of the fields which I noted down, Britain imposed certain restrictions that you are not allowed to do so. And the first and the foremost was the Navigation Act, which imposed a very strict restrictions on the trade and the commercial activities in England. But by 1763, the year when this conflict erupted, there was a policy that is called a policy of salutary neglect. Salutary neglect. This policy is called the policy of salutary neglect, meaning I know what are you doing, but I am neglecting it. Don't impose, by force. Rules are there, but forget about the rules. Let them be. Okay? So this policy of salutary neglect was, applied by the British authorities. They never enforced that you just follow, the Navigation Act in stringent terms. Never. But 1763 was the year when suddenly the scenario changed. What happened? I will tell you. Okay. So, under the salutary neglect, these restrictions were not very forcibly enforced. Next point. Because of this policy, meanwhile, American mercantilism developed and soon paved the way for the growth of capitalism. So there were possibilities in American economy to develop a parallel economy. Now, next question arises. What happened in 1763? Okay, when there was policy of salutary neglect, that what was the crisis in 1763 which suddenly arose? Actually, George III was the king who actually initiated the industrial development of England. ना? George III, कल लिखा था George III के साथ दो लोग थे, एक थे ग्रेनविल और दूसरे थे टाउन्सहेंड. ग्रेनविल एंड टाउन्सहेंड, लिख लो, ग्रेनविल एंड टाउन्सहेंड. Okay, these two personalities assisted George III how to push industrial revolution and how to protect your mercantilist class. So Granville was the person who actually decided to impose the restrictions very strictly on United States of America, and the steps which were taken by Granville were called Granville measures. Later it were referred as Granville measures. Okay. So here, before going into details of this conflict, I just want to ask one particular question that is the most important question from this section. What was the reason of conflict? What was the reason of conflict? Economic, not political, not ideological, not cultural, not national. It was इकोनॉमिक, पैसे का मामला फंस गया दोनों के बीच में और वहीं से टकराहट शुरू हो गई। अब लिख लो, एक मेरा समझ है कि थोड़ा सा अंडरस्टैंडिंग बनाने के लिए, जनरल स्टडीज में नहीं लेकिन कहीं किसी रेफरेंस में कुछ काम आ सकता है, इसलिए लिखो लुइस हैकर, LOUIS, लुइस हैकर, HACKER, comma, an economic historian, comma, argued American Revolution was an economic contest. American Revolution was an economic contest between American capitalism and British mercantilism. ओके, अब इसको जरा ध्यान से पढ़ो और पढ़ के हमसे सवाल पूछो। एक गुत्थी यहां पे है, उन्होंने क्या कहा, अमेरिकन कैपिटलिज्म वर्सेस ब्रिटिश मर्केंटलिज्म। वाई नॉट ब्रिटिश कैपिटलिज्म और वाई नॉट अमेरिकन मर्केंटलिज्म? यही है आईएएस बनने की यात्रा, यहीं से जो है शुरू होती है। वेरी गुड, बहुत बढ़िया, समझ गए तो कल्याण है। ठीक है, ब्रिटिश मर्केंटलिज्म के इंटरेस्ट है, ब्रिटिश इन्वेस्टमेंट यहां स्टेक पर नहीं है, वो तो चाहता ही है अमेरिका करो, पैसा लगाने में दिक्कत थोड़ी है, पैसा ले जाने में दिक्कत है। वाई अमेरिकन कैपिटलिज्म? बिकॉज you know the protection to the British mercantilism in a way halting the growth of capitalism in America. Mercantilism developed into capitalism. क्लियर है? तो यहां पर ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट दिखा रहे हैं। ठीक है, बहुत ही बढ़िया, मजा आ गया। चलो, so meaning it was more an economic contest than the political one, and in addition to that, just again try to bring India here, and these are the questions, portions, or these are the points where I would like to trigger you people. Just try to think about India, because it was an anti-colonial struggle, yes, because it was for the independence, yes, but because it was for the liberty, yes, but despite that, the nature of American Revolution was quite different from the Indian Revolution, isn't it? So what were the differences? Just keep in mind. Any time this particular thing will, benefit you in any of the papers in the UPSC. Okay, this difference. Okay. So here you see, if it was an economic conflict, meaning it was not a war of ideologies. Maybe ideological was there, but just to protect the economic interest of America. It was not an anti-colonial struggle of the nature India fought against the British. Okay? It was not a political conflict between two contesting ideologies, nationalism versus colonialism. All these things are to be pondered over. Okay? This analytical ability needs to develop to crack the UPSC examination. Okay? So here I brought this Indian case. So if it was not a, political conflict, it was not an ideological conflict or nationalist struggle against imperialism. What was that? It was an economic conflict, okay. But in the later stages, America fought for the independence. So is it okay to say that it was basically essentially an economic conflict? Yes, it was an economic conflict, but what was the ultimate goal of the struggle, where it reached? Liberty, independence. Okay, this liberty. And here comes, that is the most precious value which American Revolution imbibed, liberty. तो इकोनॉमिक है, पर उसके साथ साथ लिबर्टी या स्वतंत्रता एक बहुत ही जरूरी चीज है जो अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन में हमें दिखाई देती है. Why liberty? If objections are not quite vital as they were there in Indian case, what was the reason behind it? Number 2, remoteness from the मदर कंट्री. लिख लो इसको सबको, वरना ये छूटेगा. ठीक है, लिखो. डिस्पाइट दैट, इकोनॉमिक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के बाद लिख रहे हो ना, डिस्पाइट दैट द अर्ज फॉर लिबर्टी इन अमेरिका was traditionally powerful, because of 2 reasons. Number 1, remoteness from the mother country. And number 2, no representation in the British parliamentary system. No representation in the British parliamentary system. Clear? अगर अपने ही भाई थे अंग्रेजों के तो कह देते कि तुम अपनी पार्लियामेंट बनाओ, अपने लेजिस्लेचर्स चुनो, लेकिन उसमें से कुछ लेजिस्लेचर हमारे लिए भी चुन लो जो तुमको ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट में रिप्रेजेंट करेंगे. जब सेशन चलेगा तो भेज देना. कर सकते थे ना, नहीं किया. इसलिए कल्चरली सिमिलर, वेरी क्लोज टू ब्रिटेन, आइडियोलॉजिकली वेरी सिमिलर टू द ब्रिटेन, emotionally connected with the Britain. Despite that, conflict arose. 2 reasons: remoteness from the mother country. Remoteness from the mother country. The interest of the Indians here in this country and interest of the Indians in America are not same. They are very much different. Sometimes they are contrary to each other. So meaning remoteness of the country matters. The mother country is not shaping their policies and the programs as per the requirement or as per the benefit of the colony. They have been, shaping and designing as per the necessity of the colonial empire. So that is the remoteness, okay, and the second factor. And then it turned into a economic conflict. What is the major conflict? Economic. And here one similarity between the the American case of independence or the rise of nationalism and the Indian case of rise of nationalism. When you will read, so that's why I am not, opening up all the details, facts, figures and, analysis all of a sudden. But when you will read about, I believe that, since I have not, taught you this, particular segment of Indian history, I believe that you don't know. You don't have any good idea of it. But if you have a good idea of, you can understand that when after 1857, growth of nationalism was seen, what was the basic conflict point between the early nationalists and the colonial rule? What was the point which was raised by them? Economic. Yes, economic. That's why Indian nationalism during the early phase of its rise is referred as economic nationalism. Britain, drain of wealth. What is drain of wealth? What is drain of wealth? पैसा ले जा रहे हैं हमारा. That is economic complaint. Exploitation of the peasantry, economic complaint. Unemployment of the youth, economic complaint. So in that way, if you just see that all the nationalist conflicts against the imperialism are essentially economic conflicts, because colonialism is an exploitative system which actually exploits the economy. So what was the limitation, narrow limitation of the American independence movement is actually a grand reality that can be generalized in all other anti-colonial movements. Clear? आ गया चक्कर समझ में? ठीक है? तो यहां पर अभी बात हुई लिबर्टी. So once again, just to summarize all these points and just to make 1-2 major points. Who were Americans? Originally British, culturally largely British, despite having, dissimilarities. Christian ethos. Christian ethos. Missionaries came from England and baptized the American continent. People were connected with the church, emotionally, religiously connected with the British. And there were multiple other threads and connections which connect them with the British. But they were the people who put their enormous efforts to establish a colony in USA. So who contributed to establish a colony in USA? The British. Okay. But who put this labor and energy into it? Those who migrated from the Britain to England. It also challenges the notion of nationhood. If you are writing an essay on the concept of nationalism, nation state, you can put this point into it. Belonging to the same motherland does not mean that you belong to the same nation. Isn't it? Clear? Point clear? ये समझने के लिए आदित्य नहीं समझ में आया फिर से बताओ. नहीं आ गया भाई? ठीक है. जैसे अगर इस केस में देखो, इंडियन मुस्लिम्स, पाकिस्तानी मुस्लिम्स, बांग्लादेशी मुस्लिम्स, अफगानी मुस्लिम, छोड़ दो इंडिया पाकिस्तान के बारे में. अभी अफगानिस्तान की बाउंड्री में घुस करके सब बैठ गए हैं, लेकिन बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान एक थे, आपस में लड़ गए. ठीक है ना? तो इस तरीके से थोड़ा whatever you are reading, read it from diverse perspectives. That is my lesson of the today's class. Okay, so those were the British, self-made, self-confident. Okay, and this actually gave birth to the individual aspirations of the Britishers who migrated from the Britain to America. Now they were Americans. Self-aspiration and the self-imagination. And this self-imagination converted into the notion of liberty. Liberate from the mother country. We are, something else, not the British. Okay? Converted into national aspiration. Okay? Why? लेस रिप्रेजेंटेशन, मोर डिस्टेंस। भाई भाई हैं, एक रहता है बोकारो में, एक आ गया दिल्ली में, फोन पे बात हो रही है, मिल रहे हैं तो प्यार मोहब्बत है। घर में डिसीजन ले लिया गया कि इनकी शादी होगी, बताया नहीं, ठीक है, दूरी बढ़ गई। लेस रिप्रेजेंटेशन इन द डिसीजन मेकिंग, मोर डिस्टेंस, ठीक है, एंड ऐसे ही कुछ हुआ ना, ठीक है। देन they have already constituted a kind of confluence or commonwealth of 13 states, meaning they were politically aware, they have a political entity. However, 13 different states were separately operated. Despite that, an identity was there that these 13 colonies belong to a separate entity, a separate past, a separate history. सबका तो कॉलोनी ऐसे ही बना, ठीक है। तो लूज एसोसिएशन विद द ब्रिटिश अथॉरिटी वाज एडिशनली देयर। सो इन सच सर्कमस्टेंसेस, व्हेन ब्रिटेन मूव्ड फ्रॉम सैल्यूटरी नेग्लेक्ट वाला पॉलिसी टू स्ट्रिक्ट implications and strict, imposition of all the reforms, all the restrictions, all the instructions and the legislations, USA reacted very sharply. Tomorrow we will discuss some ideological roots of the revolution, course of revolution, consequences and the impact of revolution. Okay? ठीक.